What is up? What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the show. We've got some Seattle Mariners talk. The ZIPS projection system for the 2024 Mariners was released. I'm going to go over it, break it down. There's actually a lot of positives to it, some negatives. I'll get into all of it, and we'll kind of tie it all back together for where we think this team can improve and what they can do. Before I get started, do me a favor, hit that like button. It's the quickest, easiest way to help support my channel. Even if you don't care about the video, you just want to help the channel, hit the like button. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button as well. Both things help my channel grow. And if you want to think about becoming a channel member, as we get closer to baseball season, a lot more stuff coming up in involvement, giveaways, contests, and stuff. So think about becoming a channel member as well. Hope you guys are all having a great Wednesday morning. Holidays are upon us, so I hope you guys are all enjoying the holidays as best you can. With loved ones, family, and everything like that. So I truly hope you all have a blessed holiday season or having one so far. So Dan Zambrowski of Fangraphs on Twitter yesterday posted the 2024 Mariners depth chart projection. So I'm going to pull it up here. We're going to go over it a little bit, some of the positives, some of the negatives. Before I get into it, I want to talk about one thing. And I said it on Twitter last night, and, take with it what you will. Listen, we all have very valid frustrations with the Mariners ownership group. Extremely valid, right? Like, I am not going to come on here and tell you guys support this ownership group or anything like that. I hope they sell the team, and I hope we can get new ownership group in here that is putting much more of a foot forward to spend and get this team in the right direction. However, I do think we can separate frustration with ownership versus frustration with team, if that makes any sense. My point being is that I do think this is a good baseball team. I do think the core of this team is really good. I don't think they're far away from being a World Series contender. I think a few pieces here, and we're going to look at the depth chart, I think a few pieces here can put this team over the top. That does not mean I like this ownership group. It does not. I don't. But I also don't think that just because I don't like the ownership group that this team is losing 90, 95 games next year. That's not going to happen. I mean, unless you just get a rash of injuries. This is a baseball team that has a pretty solid core that is probably not going to be bottoming out or anything like that. So I think sometimes we tend to take that frustration with ownership and then translate into, well, this team sucks. They don't. This is not a bad baseball team by any means. Now, they need to make some moves and they need to get better. It's not good enough right now, but this is not some 95 loss team that we're trying to build upon here. I think this is a team with a decent core that can make a run next year if the right moves are made this offseason. They haven't done that so far. Will they? I don't know, but it's not some impossible task, I think, to get this team to the next level. So let's go ahead and pull up the projection here. Let's see if I have it. And hopefully that is there. Perfect. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. So essentially you've got wins above replacement level here. For each player. Again, this is projected on the roster right now. This is not a prediction for what the Mariners are going to run out their opening day necessarily. But if the season started tomorrow, this is probably what you're looking at for the roster. And this is where they project for wins over above replacement level. Excuse me. If you add all this up here, and I've done it and others have done it too, you get 40.5 wins above replacement level. Tack that on to about the average is about 47.5 that you would get from a replacement level team. So you tack the Mariners wins above replacement level onto that 47.5, and you get an 87.5 projection win total. Some of you might think that's high, whatever. This is the computer projection system. It has no beef bias or anything like that. It might not be right, but it does project about 87.5. Now, do I think this current roster here is 87.5 wins? I think it's a little under, and I'll get into why. I don't think this is quite 87.5 in my opinion. But the point of the matter is, if you want to just take this and say you've got an 87 win team, you should be able to make some moves to get that to 90 or so and maybe have a legitimate shot to compete. I think for me, this is my frustration with the ownership group, to be honest, is that I see a good core here. And like I said, I'm going to get into it. I see a legitimate core here that is really good. It should not take you a whole lot to get this team from 87 to 91, 92. It is very possible. And that's why it's so frustrating when this team has to take two and a half steps back to move, or excuse me, a step and a half back to move 2 steps forward instead of just taking a step and a half forward, right? They've got to do all this stuff. And it's like, oh, at the end of the day, we end up a half step ahead. Well, instead of just going 1.5, 2 steps ahead, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But that's, I think, where a lot of the frustration comes. If I thought this was a 90-loss team, I really wouldn't want this team to spend too much money this offseason. I don't think that's a smart way to build yourself. It's not a way to pull yourself out of garbage. It's a way to put yourself over the top. That's when you should be spending money. And that's why it's frustrating, because I do think this is a good baseball team that is not, hamstrung like Oakland, Tampa Bay, and some of those teams that literally can't do anything. I think they do have this ownership group does have enough to help put this team over the top. So we'll see what they end up doing, but let's get into it. So right off the bat, the positives are that this team does, if this is all comes to fruition, this is about an 87.5 win team. That is a positive right off the bat, because again, there are plenty of spaces here where you can upgrade to get this to 90, 91. I will say this is very, very, and again, this is just this right here is very reliant on the pitching. If you get a single injury to your pitching staff, you are really, really screwed. Again, with this projected lineup the way it is. I will say, like, the odds of you getting, not having a pitching injury are very low. We saw it last year with Robbie Ray. And I've actually advocated this team adds a starting pitcher. I don't quite trust Brian Wu and Bryce Miller to give you those 30 starts. That's probably where that half win is coming from. Emerson Hancock. I imagine it's kind of Brian Wu may miss some time for injury and whatnot, potentially. So, you're going to have to use a 6 starter. I think, they're using Emerson Hancock there, but it's probably more of a projection of what you would get from your 6-7 starter as a whole. So this team is very reliant on stars and relief pitching. 3.6 WAR is, a pretty solid boost from your bullpen. At most, that's going to be coming from Munoz and Brash. But just to put that into perspective, you're getting more WAR here out of your relievers than you are from anybody in your lineup, minus Julio right now. So you are very, very pitching reliant. But it's also why I think that this team will not lose 90, 95 games. I should add, this pitching staff's also really, really good, right? This is one of the best starting staffs in the league. Luis Castillo, George Kirby, and Logan Gilbert. I'm not going through all teams in baseball right now, but you could make a case as the best 1, 2, 3 in baseball. I wouldn't put up a huge fight on that, if that's what you told me. And truthfully, Bryce Miller and Brian Wu is a pretty good back end. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing the Mariners add a starter. I don't fully trust Bryce Miller. You look at the Savant page, it's not pretty. I like Brian Wu's repertoire, but there's been the injury history. I wouldn't mind another veteran guy in there as kind of the 4th starter to anchor this rotation. The Bryce Miller WAR seems a little high, 2.3, and Wu seems a little low. I don't know if they're just assuming that Wu probably won't make all the starts. But at the end of the day, you balance it all out, it probably comes out about accurate. That's what, about 4 wins above replacement level total from Miller and Wu. I think that's fair if you get enough starts from them, that's what they delivered, that's what they could deliver. And Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert seem pretty on the nose. So again, if these guys all make the starts and you don't have a lot of injury issues, then yeah, this starting pitching staff's amazing. You are probably an injury to Kirby or Gilbert away from being really screwed. And you might be wondering why there's no Robbie Ray in there. Robbie Ray, Jerry said the earliest is probably the All-Star break. So you could probably say August. I mean, anything you get from Robbie Ray next year is going to be gravy. I think the hope for Ray is that you're in contention. He gets back August, September and can help put this team over the top and maybe get into the playoffs. But to project anything from him is really, really difficult because there is a decent chance he doesn't pitch next year. It is entirely possible. So I would not bank on anything from Robbie Ray here. But it's nice to have in the back pocket if he can get healthy. I just wouldn't bank on it. Again, bullpen, love it. 3.6 is solid. Bullpens are always hit or miss. That could easily be lower than 3.6. I don't see it getting much higher than that. So there is definitely some downside there. I definitely think, those arms are capable of producing that value. But again, bullpens can be up and down like nobody's business. I mean, we can see bullpens go from the best in baseball to the worst overnight. It is a volatile, position isn't the right word, but group. It just, they don't pitch a ton of innings when it's all said and done. So you leave yourself up to more sample size, you know, tomfoolery essentially. So, I'm not going to argue that 3.6. I think that's fair, but that could definitely go, south if some of those guys struggle or something like that. So overall, the pitching, listen, again, this is just based on what they have right now. Very pitching heavy. You're relying on your pitching. You're probably hoping you win a lot of 2-1 games, 1-0 games. If this is the lineup you go into the season with, but that pitching is good enough, right? Like you could take out, everybody in this lineup. Like let's say you leave Julio and then you go Zavala at catcher, Dylan Moore at first, and everything else is the same. Marlo Canzone, Rojas, Crawford, Urias, Trammell at DH, and the pitching staff. And I think you're probably a 77 to 80 win team. I think this pitching is that good, especially if it stays healthy. So even if you do bottom out this lineup, I think the pitching is enough to carry. So that's where it's like, I see people going, oh, this team, this ownership sucks. They do, but they're going to lose 90, 95 games. They're not going to lose 90, 95 unless they literally do nothing offensively and they lose Kirby, Gilbert, or Castillo or something for the year. This is not a 90 to 95 loss team. And again, I will reiterate, that's what the frustration is for me, at least. And I think for most of you as well, is that we see a decent team here that should be invested in, not a team that should be, having to shed payroll left and right just to make one small move. So let's get into the lineup or the position players, if you will. Not pretty, right? That is not a very good group overall. I mean, Julio, fantastic. We know that. I will say this. While I think maybe overall this projection is a little bullish on the starting pitching, I'd say it's a little bare on Cal Raleigh. 2.8 WAR from Raleigh and Zavala seems pretty low to me. Cal's been a 4+ win player the last 2 years. I don't necessarily see him, again, barring injury or something, dropping too much below that. Truthfully, I think Cal's closer to a 5-6 win player than he is 2.8. So I think that is really, really low projection for Cal Raleigh. But on the flip side, I think 2.4 is pretty high for Urias, Rojas, Caballero, and Moore over there at third base. I think 2 is somewhat optimistic for Ty France. I wouldn't put it past him. So I mean, maybe not. I actually think that's pretty fair. I actually think 1.6 for the DH spot is very forgiving from ZIPS. I know 1.6 is not a lot at all, but for DH, I mean, honestly, that's about what Jorge Soler produced last year. Now, mostly that's from bad defensive value, but it is what it is. But I don't see Taylor Trammell and Zach DeLoach producing 1.6 wins above replacement level. I think you would be close to 0 with Trammell and DeLoach. Now, they do have Cal getting some DH at-bats, Ty France, Dom Canzone. I mean, if you do that, then yeah, I guess I could see where the total position could come out to 1.5. But with Taylor Trammell as the primary, I think you're closer to 0 there. I'm just, Taylor Trammell's not good. Like, no, you know what I mean? And DeLoach unknown. I don't hate Zach DeLoach or anything. I think he's an interesting prospect. But not someone I would expect to come on and produce a ton off the bat. So, yes, I think Cal is low, but I think DH, if that's what you go into the season with, is high. Now, the good news here is this. I do not expect Taylor Trammell to be your opening day DH. I didn't expect Tommy Lazdell to be the opening day DH last year, so who knows? So I think you should get an improvement there, and I think Cal will be better than 2.8 WAR. I think worst case scenario is like 3.5, somewhere in there, and that's still almost a full win better. And listen, when you have a team that's projected 87 wins, 1 win is a lot. Now, the good news here is this. You look at this lineup, and there are places where this team can easily just get better by not even doing a whole lot. Like, I'm not big on Jorge Soler. You guys know that. I want to be clear on that. Let me clear something up. If you can get 2023 Jorge Soler, sign me up. And maybe Brant Brown had something to do with that. Maybe he found a little magic in there. I don't bring up 2019 Jorge Soler a lot. That was his real big year because that's going to be 5 years ago, opening day. Soler is just very inconsistent. Now, the Savant profile is great, but the results have been very inconsistent. However, with that said, you sign Jorge Soler tomorrow, you put him in there DH. I'm using Steamer here because I don't think ZIPS has released. I don't know if they have the individual projection out for free agencies or for free agent players yet, but I think Steamer or something had Soler projected around 2 wins above replacement level. So there, right there, you're getting about a half win improvement. That's if you think that DH group down there is worth 1.6. You're getting about half win improvement right there. Boom, that puts you at 88. That's a huge improvement. This team missed the playoffs by a game last year. So a half game here, a half game there, absolutely is big for this team. That could have gotten them in the playoffs last season. I think the outfield should be a pretty easy place to make some improvements. I'll go back to DH real quick. Whether that's Soler, Justin Turner, JD Martinez, that should be a pretty easy place to get a clear upgrade at. The outfield is another place where I think you can get some pretty clear upgrades. I mean, if you just sign Yuli Gurriel, put him in right field or left, whatever, you're looking at about another 1-win improvement over what's currently out there. I will say this, remember this too, guys. If you are going through this and doing this on your own and making your own predictions, remember, if you're removing Cade Marlowe from left with 1.1 wins above replacement level and you sign Yuli Gurriel and he's worth 2.2 wins, remember, it's not improving your roster by 2.2. That's a 1.1 improvement because you have to take away Cade Marlowe's wins above replacement level as well. So let's say you do that. There's a win. That's 89 right there. Right field, same thing. I think you can find some improvements there. I think you could maybe find something at third base if you want to trade for Isaac Paredes. I'm not wild on Paredes, but I think, again, you get an upgrade there at third base. And then you move, well, really what you get is maybe Paredes produces about that 2.4, 2.5 wins above replacement level, but you can move Urias to second with Rojas. And I think that combination gets you to about 2 wins as well. So again, you're looking at about, a win improvement. Maybe that's your 90. Now, again, do I think they're going to make all these moves? That remains to be seen, right? They haven't yet. So, we'll see. But I do think there is some moves they can make here to take this team. And if you go with this ZIPS projection system, it's 87.5. There are some very, very clear ways to get this team to 90. DH is an obvious one, and one outfield position is another obvious one as well. Or maybe you do something like a platoon in right field. I know I'm kind of done with the platoons too, but I'm just going off what we have here, right? You got to go with what you got that can make some improvements for you in right field as well, or left, however you want to, move these guys around. So I think there are some very clear-cut ways this team can get better. And I think, listen, I don't think this is going to be your opening day. Listen, if this is your opening day lineup, I'm there with you guys. I'll ride. I'll have the sell the team signs up. I already think this ownership group should sell the team, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a good baseball team behind them. There's a lot of bad ownerships that have produced good teams. I mean, the Oakland A's in the 2000s were one of the best teams in baseball. Their ownership's always been cheap and not good, but they were able to produce really good baseball teams. The Rays don't have good ownership groups, and they have produced some very solid teams. I know these teams haven't won a World Series, not the best examples, but the only point I'm trying to make is, like, I do think it's okay to separate our ownership frustration with also recognizing that this team does have a good core and that it can win and it can compete if they do some of the right stuff and make some of the right moves. Now, last thing I'll add before I get out of here. Do I think that's an 87.5 win team if that's what they roll out on opening day? I don't. I think it's a little bullish on the pitching. And listen, I'm very bullish on this pitch. It's one of the best staffs in baseball. But I don't know. I think there's an injury in there somewhere. It's just what it is, right? Like, especially with pitching. I don't think you're going to get that much production out of your pitching staff. I think it's going to carry the team, but I think it might be a little bit lower. And I don't trust Trammell to give you that much at DH. And I think you're very replacement level in the outfield if you're running Cade Marlowe out there. I like Dom Canzone, but I'm not handing him that right field job by any means. I think this, assuming no injuries and stuff, is about an 82 to 85 win team is where I would personally put it. But the projection system is also, it probably knows better than me. It's smarter. That doesn't mean they're always right by any means. But that's about where I would have this team. If this is what they rolled out there for 2024, I think you're looking about 83 to 84 wins would be my prediction for this team. I think you get a little more out of Cal. I think you can maybe even get a little more out of Julio. I think you'd run into a lot of the same problems as last year. I think you'd have a lineup that has some good stuff in it and some good, a good core with Julio, Cal, JP. And if Ty bounces back, which I think is very possible, um, but your bottom of the lineup is just going to be atrocious. There's going to be too much Caballero, Trammell, Haggerty, more Haggerty, Canzone, like just a lot of mid at best at the bottom of the lineup. And that's just, it's going to end up killing you if that's what you run out there. So I look at it like this. I think DH is an easy upgrade. Again, I'm not wild on Jorge Soler, but I do think it is certainly much better than doing nothing. So you know what? Fine. Count me in for signing Soler. It improves the DH position, gives you some good pop there. Go ahead and do it. I'd still prefer Turner or Martinez, a little more consistent, but I mean, whatever. Outfield, Yuli Gurriel remains out there. I think that would be a nice, easy addition that automatically gets you better in the outfield. Just starting with those two right there, you're probably about 2.5 wins better. So you're taking 84 to 86 or 87 to closer to 90 right there. So we'll see what they end up doing. Again, I will be here. As soon as they do something, I will have a video. I'm waiting. Trust me. It's been a month since the Seahawks have won a game. My Coyotes have lost 3 in a row. And the Mariners not only haven't played since September, they've so far gotten worse in the offseason. So it would be nice to talk about some good news. I think this is objectively pretty positive. I know it was getting made fun of in the comments section, but I actually think this is a reasonable, a realistic reason to be optimistic. And I think people are forgetting how good this pitching staff is. The lineup, yes, that's not a good lineup, but the pitching staff is legitimate. It is one of the top ones in the league, and it should avoid this team from bottoming out. So I do not believe for a second this is a 90-loss baseball team, but they've got to make some moves to get better. So we'll see what they do. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys all next time. Again, hope you're having a blessed holiday. Love you guys. Take care. Be with your friends. Be with your family. As I always say, try not to let these teams drag you down too much. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So hopefully they can make some moves, get over the top, and we'll see. Have a great one, everybody.